When it comes to custom orders, sometimes there's more to the history other than, I want a guitar in this color. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. John brought a couple of cool Flying Vs over for consignment, and we're going to start with this one. It's a 1959 reissue Flying V in an olive drab green finish. And at first, I just thought, oh yeah, that's that CME exclusive. I remember seeing this thing get listed in 2019. But as I did more research, I realized, oh my goodness, maybe there's a little bit more to the tale. But first, let's learn about Korina Vs. An original Flying V looks like this. It's crafted out of Korina. It was introduced around 1958 alongside the Gibson Explorer. These were not hot sellers at first, but hey, get the late 60s and early 70s in here and then they start to become popular. As it's 1967 when the Flying V first comes back, and it looks something like this. Here's a picture of an original. But at its reintroduction, they changed from a Korina body to a mahogany one, and they changed so many things about it, from the size and shape as well as how it was spec'd. So here's what makes a 50s V special. Typically speaking, the neck is a lot chunkier. That's something you might not know just looking at one of these, but the obvious ones are, hey, we've got an output jack on its own separate plate. We have a string through design. That's pretty cool. Got that nice V-shaped pattern there, as well as a modified control layout, as well as a slightly different pick guard. But then check out your headstock. You got this big old gaudy Gibson badge. I love those things. And you have a regular truss rod cover style rather than the bigger one. The original ones also have this little rubber strip over here. The idea behind this is you can put it on your lap like this, and that is going to grab it and it's not going to fall. However, everybody knows this is how you play a Flying V sitting down and be comfortable. So that was something that was antiquated quite quickly. But it's a cool thing to know about. Another good thing to know about the Edge is it's actually a thicker guitar rather than the later 67 ones. Looking at them side by side, you can tell that they slimmed them out quite a bit. And also, speaking of the body, it's wider set. It's like very wide in this area. You can definitely see what I'm talking about right here. The whole body shape is just vastly different. But you've got to be careful when buying a used 58 or 59 reissue Flying V because they're not all made out of Korina. That's actually a recent re-addition to the Gibson lineup. Sometimes they'll actually be spec'd with mahogany. And that doesn't mean it's a bad guitar, it just means it should affect the price that you ultimately pay for one of these. This is one of the mahogany-bodied ones. I believe it's somewhere around the 2000s that they start doing them. When these were offered, they were around $5,000 brand new, and sometimes they would also throw some fun colors on there. However, in 2021, we saw Korina get reintroduced within the Gibson's lineup, which saw the discontinuation of the mahogany version, and the price went from $5,000 to $10,000. So you don't find as many fun custom colors in this current era. They are out there. You can buy them. They're just more expensive, and I think what's the point? You can't even see the beautiful wood grain anymore, but to each their own. But due to the discontinuation of this mahogany version, we've actually seen a small bump in the used values of the mahoganies, as well as desirability, because people are after that 50 style Flying V, but they don't want to spend $10,000. So what's the story of this olive drab one? It was sold by Chicago Music Exchange. I'm not sure if it was a custom order of theirs or a dealer hot sheet, but doing some research online, it appears about 3 of these have shown up. I've seen a serial number of 99314, which is the one we're documenting today, 90383, which would make that a 2020 example, and then a 991955. That one was gifted to Dan of the Black Keys for the Let's Rock tour. You can actually see him playing it in this photo. And at one point in time, the Music Zoo made a P90 wrap tail version of this guitar. That thing is cool. CME and the Music Zoo are well known for doing custom exotic colors, and this was kind of a CME thing at that time. However, there actually is a little bit of history behind an original Korina Flying V painted green. Today, it's known as the Virginia V. Basically, the story goes is, hey, it's a Korina Flying V. Somebody wanted it to be green at some point, and they refinished it. However, original Flying Vs are now worth crazy money. If you think bursts are expensive, get into the vintage Korina world. We're talking like $250K to $500,000 plus. But due to that, the green paint was stripped off of it and refinished into natural. However, you can still see some of the refin in the pickup cavities, in your output jack route, and other intimate locations on the guitar. Now, whether or not these were intentionally done as a tribute to the Virginia V, I don't know. It really probably just came down to, hey, olive drab, cream, looks fantastic, let's do it. But it was fun to discover that there was an original kind of like this. And if you're loving what you're seeing here, but you don't have custom shop budget, I've got some cool alternative options for you. There is currently an Epiphone version of this guitar that's a dealer exclusive. It utilizes black plastics, but you might be able to change those. There was recently a 70s Flying V done up in olive drab. Unfortunately, it is now discontinued, but it had the cream plastics and the zebra bobbin pickups. I'm sure you can find one on Reverb or ask around on some forums. But around the same time this guitar was made in 2019, there was a Flying V tribute model. It also had the black plastics. It's a satin finish. It's not exactly 50 spec, but it's close. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to the made-to-measure custom order program, and you're probably going to have to pay the Korina tax. However, a good way to get around that is ordering a Flying V custom. They're a little bit different, but they still make those out of mahogany, and they don't cost quite as much. But some fun history about this one is John initially purchased it to go out on tour in 2020, but what happened during that year? That canceled it. But that doesn't mean he didn't get to gig this thing out anyways. It is not a mint condition collectible. It's got some bumps and bruises, but it cleaned up nicely. But his initial plan on this was to be the army guy. He was going to get some creamy decals to make a camo pattern on this. And then I was telling him when we were talking, oh, he also should have got the green decals and put them over top of your pick guard too. So that is a really cool option for someone, because when it comes to the olive drab finish, it's usually army guys and guys that like green that enjoy them. But besides just our guitar, we do have an original custom shop style case with that crushed burgundy interior. And as far as official case candy, we've got our Gibson Gold warranty, which shows that it was completed 5/17 of 2019. We've got some various hang tags about strings and custom shop. We've got the case key, a historic recreation of a hang tag. The please don't throw your COA away. It's in the case that used to be attached to the handle. And of course, the official Gibson COA, billing it as a 59 Flying V. And a few other goodies like the original receipt and stuff in here from CME. So I don't know about you guys, but I love the green with the cream. It works incredibly well. So let's go ahead and throw this on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside our green friend, let's go ahead and see what kind of humbuckers we're rocking. We do have the VOS treatment to this guitar. A little bit more on that here in a second. But we've got a custom bucker in the neck and a matching custom bucker in the bridge. A very nice set of pickups. And within the circuit, they read 7.99K ohms, neck position 782, and the middle just for fun, 395. But now for the pickup cavities, I was hoping we would see mahogany exposed somewhere, but no dice so far. If you really know to look for it, you can just barely see it right here, but that's technically the neck. And that white spot poking through is the maple that caps off your truss rod. And then if you're like, well, hey, Trogly, isn't that the mahogany? No, that is buffing compound that was left in the guitar. You'll find that quite often in this era. But if you're thinking, hey, that's strange, we've got a short neck tenon on this? No. Flying V's got really long ones. They extend past the neck cavity, and they hide right under there for the pick guard. So if you're always wondering about the design of the Flying V pick guard, it was initially here for a reason, to cover that over. But now let's talk about VOS. VOS is a finish styling made to make a guitar look a little bit older than brand new, but not necessarily aged. It's the first step in Gibson's artificial aging process. It's very similar to just putting a buffing compound on your guitar because you actually can clean it away. When this guitar first came to me, it had the VOS finish all over, but I did a light polishing simply because the guitar was dirty and there were scratches in here. I did a live stream on the show and we cleaned this one together. What you're seeing here is what it was before, and here's our after. Did it get rid of all the scratches? No, but sometimes scratches can literally just be in the VOS coat, so sometimes it's good to find out. Personally, I'm not a big fan of VOS. It makes the guitar feel a little bit different, and you can see it's like they took a fine sandpaper almost, because it looks scratched up, but they're trying to mimic a guitar that's just sat in its case rather than been heavily played. But the VOS treatment is still present underneath our pick guard versus what we have over here. It's a personal take on what you prefer, but just remember, any VOS guitar can be turned back to gloss with just a little bit of elbow grease and polish. My attempt with this one was not to completely remove it, especially not off of our pickup covers and stuff. I think that looks quite nice with this hue. I just wanted it to be clean. But as far as getting under the hood of a 59 Flying V, that's what your route looks like. Again, more VOS and buffing compound is present in here, but it's all covered. And it doesn't look like they were actually using Gibson branded pots in this particular era. They used a more historically correct style, and then we've got a bumblebee capacitor over here. And we've got our L-shaped toggle switch over here. But one other thing to know about the wiring of a 58 or 59 Flying V is the bridge pickup has an additional secret. They ground the system off utilizing a wire attaching to this ABR1 piece, and they tie it into your bridge pickup lead right there. But as far as your controls themselves, here's your toggle switch with the amber switch tip. Then it's volume for your neck, volume for your bridge, master tone. And as we were talking earlier, our separate output jack with its own plate. There's not a lot of wiring room in there, but it looks like pretty much more the same as what we saw in the other cavities. And of course, the most unique feature to a 50s style Flying V has to be its string through tailpiece. There's no reason that this has to be this large. You could get away with just a little small V right there, but they were going for the style. But that also gets our VOS treatment, and it's pinned to the top utilizing these three. I'm not sure, is there a way to remove these without damaging it? If anybody knows, feel free to chime in. I'll make a short about it. I've always been too scared to damage it, and getting that part replaced would be expensive. But the last thing to look at on the body is the bridge itself. This had a little bit of natural play wear to it, as well as the VOS treatment, so I did a mild cleaning as well. But it says Gibson ABR1 on the back, and is historically mounted as it should be on a custom shop Flying V. But the old CME spec sheet called this a two-piece mahogany body, so I would imagine we have a center seam, but I don't see any witness lines on the front. So we can move on from the body to our neck, to our awesome fretboard. In my opinion, VOS finished guitars also affects the fretboard, because sometimes that gunk will get stuck on the board, and I think it just looks so much better cleaned. And I did a mild fret polishing, because even if you have an aged guitar, you should still have a perfectly maintained fretboard for a great playing surface, in my opinion. But check out those side marker inlays. They're technically white, but there is a slight yellowing to our clear coat, so they've turned yellow. But we've got the usual 12-inch fretboard radius with a 24 3/4-inch scale, and the 59V measures 1.71 inches at the nut, 2.07 at the 12, 0.88 first fret neck depth, and 1.01 by the 12. It's a nice chunky round C. Not the biggest neck I've ever felt, but still quite considerable. If you like thin necks, this is not for you. Go for a 67 style. But now we can move on to our headstock to appreciate the majesty that this is. I've always loved these big gaudy Gibson logos. They're just ridiculous and look great. It actually is silver though, just in case you didn't know, and thought it was gold and reflecting on this particular release anyway. But our Kluson tuners have that same VOS treatment to them, and it looks like our truss rod is in fine shape on this example. But once again, you've got the buffing and VOS compound underneath it. From the cleaning process, it also revealed that it doesn't look like they buffed that area of the finish quite good enough right by the nut. It's a bit orange peely, although not super noticeable by any means. And here we are with fresh 9-gauge strings. Something I failed to show you was our cream truss rod cover. When I took that off during the live stream, I noticed it's like 2 times thicker than usual, so that's certainly worth mentioning. But I would say this is looking so much better than when it first came to me. But now let's flip on over to the backside. On a 50s Flying V, there's not much to go over back here. However, there's a few unique details, as we were talking earlier, such as our string-through ferrules. These have a brass block insert. However, we've got so much of the VOS and buffing compound in there, it just looks orange from far away. But has the rubber stripping ever looked better than on Olive Drab? If you're curious what this is, it's really just rubber. It's a ridged material. But we've got a strap button over here and another one right here. And let's just be real, that's not a good spot for them. It's just historically correct. Usually it's better to move it to the base of the heel. But to give you a general idea, it's about 5 inches wide right here, and then about 16.5 for the wingspan, and about 20 inches long, while being 1.575 inches thick. I was glad I cleaned this one because I found some condition things that I would have never known to disclose otherwise. There's been some sort of a nitro reaction to something right here. That's what caused that line. Could have been a lotion, insect repellent, sunscreen, something of the sort. And we've got some mild dings and impressions down here, but I didn't notice these until just now. There are some dings along our edge over here too. I know it looks good, but I think on an aggressive scale scale, I would call this one an 8.5, because we do have some mild finish weirdness right there too, but thankfully no giant gouges out of the back of our neck. But moving up the backside of our headstock, we can see our aged single ring, single line Clusons, then our serial 99314. So you read that as 9 for 1959 reissue. 9 then tells you what year of production. You have to use context clues to figure out it's 2019. And this was the 314th 1959 guitar made that particular year. I do believe that would also include the reissues of like Les Pauls. Otherwise, they'd have duplicate serials within the same year, and usually Gibson only repeats those every decade. But if you're a math fan, having 314 at the end is a lot of fun. And hey, this thing's only 6 years old, but let's do a blacklight test anyway. You never know what you'll find. It looks like our headstock's perfectly fine. I did notice some mild discoloration over here, but it looks like that's just in the surface, not the finish. We definitely have some sweat absorption in this area of the neck. However, up in the solo wing registers, not quite as much. Just because this gigging tour was canceled doesn't mean that he never used this on stage. He still played it a little bit. So we can see there was some sort of a reaction to our finish right here from something either in the case, or maybe he had something on the guitar at some point. Could also be a strap that was laying against it. Hard to say. That's funny. That was another reason I cleaned this guitar, because it was really hazed over in that area. But yeah, sure enough, you've got sweat absorption there too. It'll still show up under the black light, but in the general lighting situations, you won't notice it. But whoa, that's really cool. But we do have a little bit of a lacquer rub there on the edge. Sometimes that can happen from the factory though, just from the buffing machine. But besides his desire to camo this, he picked it because of the weight. 6 pounds, 5.5 ounces. That's really good for a giant guitar like this made out of solid mahogany. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds with the custom buckers. That was a little bit of the Rainbow Connection by Kermit the Frog due to request from our live stream cleaning. Some guy in the comments was just like, Kermit, Kermit, Kermit the Frog. Yep, it's Kermit the Flying V. Beautiful. I really like that neck pickup on this one, very full. But now let's kick on the dirt. It's got a really good chuggy. It's not like too heavy. It's very vintage inspired, but still modern. That's interesting. Whatever note that is makes something else ring on this guitar. There's no effects added right here. This is a complete dry signal. I'll even mute this top E string after I play it. That's what it is. It's the string through tailpiece, your low E string. That's the same note. So in theory, we should also get this one to ring out here. The other ones are harder to get, but keep that in mind if you own this guitar. That's your secret sauce. Also playable here. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, this thing's a winner. These custom buckers just sound phenomenal. They're a little bit microphonic, but the good kind. I wasn't like constantly fighting it just to get tone out of the guitar. It just has a really nice open, airy tone. The lightweight mahogany body of this one, it doesn't feel like much on you, and it doesn't feel like you have to support the neck. It's not super neck divey, even with the weird strap button location. If you were thinking about one of these Flying Vs, I would highly suggest considering this one. And that's not just because it's for sale in here on consignment. It's because I honestly bonded with this guitar. It is fantastic. John was saying it was a good one, and I was like, oh, okay. Sometimes that's just what owners say to sell stuff. But no, I definitely agree with him. This is fantastic, even if you're not a green lover. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to play your guitar today, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.